Friends, welcome to my video. In this video, I'll show you how to detect or check the ambient light from your Android app. So checking or detecting ambient light will help you to determine whether it's light or darkness around the phone or wherever in your environment, or basically to detect whether it's a day or night. So these kind of concepts are used in many apps. One of the famous is, say, for example, Google Maps. Apps, it turns as a darker background, and something similar we will try to do over here. So we can just name our app anything, ambient light um, app. Yeah. So I'll repeat, you can name this anything and just click finish and wait for this environment to come up. So once the environment comes up, it will look like this. So the code will be pretty simple, but before that, I'll just quickly jump to my layout view and complete a layout. I think I will retain the default text view which is provided by the in the layout. We will be printing our some kind of message in this to determine or to show uh, the output. And over here we will just give the text view an ID. You can give any ID, but we'll use this ID to in our Java code. Similarly, for constant layout, the main layout, we will give some ID because we will be also changing the background color. So we will need the ID over here. So I can just say my layout. Again, you are free to choose any name here. It doesn't matter. So apart from these two, probably what I can do is I can use a kind of set button to set the threshold value above which our app will determine whether it's a night time or daytime, or basically it's dark or light, bright. So I will just take the input. Probably it should be in a form of numerical input. I can take a decimal as well, and just, yeah. So this will be this. I'll put the constraints here, and you can just say edit text decimal, or I can just threshold. Yeah. So this ID will be using in our layout. Okay, and what else I'll do is I'll put a hint. So set threshold value. Yeah, and this will come like a gray as a hint. And I can also give the default value. Default value, probably I'll give it as 1. 1 is probably too less. It will always yeah, if 1 it is, so most likely your phone will always check as if it's a daytime. Anyway, we'll see how it what is the reaction of this in the code. And what else? Okay, so this one is coming on the left hand side. Probably I'll also set the alignment of this. So I can set the text alignment to center because it will look a bit better. Yes, perfect. So this is what I wanted. Okay, so apart from this, we'll set something in button. So first, of course, we'll set these constraints, and we can just set threshold. Yes, so that's all. Okay, it went a bit out of the layout. You can manually also adjust, or you can do it programmatically also, but to keep it simple, I'll just do it manually. I think I can make it a bit smaller as well here. Yes. Okay, perfect. Now there are few warnings. I think this is basically this text. It's asking for me to create a resource for those text, and autofill is for the edit text what we added here. So just fix these warnings automatically. That should do. Perfect. Okay, so once done this, come back to the Java code, and here first and foremost I'll create a public method, button set threshold, because I'll be using this view as a on click method for my button. So yeah, over here, perfect. So threshold spelling was wrong, never mind. Go back to your layout, and here in this on click attribute, we'll just set this callback or on for this on click method. So now we are start our Java code, and Java code will be pretty simple. But first and foremost, I will create some class variables to connect or to associate the respective widgets from our layout into this Java code. So one is of course a text view. The other one was, I think, edit text, and we can name it probably edit text threshold. Probably to this text view also I can rename it to output, something like that. It make more sense. And also we will need a handle for our constraint layout. So constraint layout, probably uh, main. So this was the main layout. Okay, what else we will need is probably we'll need a class variable to keep a hold of the threshold value what we get from this edit text, or we can directly use that as well, but probably I will use it in a separate variable, and we can just name it as float threshold. So I'll initialize it with something like 1. Again, I'll repeat, this is pretty small value, but that's fine. Probably I'll also need few other class variables like sensor manager to create the ambient light sensor or manage it, and the other one is of course the sensor. We'll just, yes, perfect. Okay, so once done this, now in our main layer or on create method, the main method will one by one start creating our variables. So first will be find view by id dot id dot text view. So if you remember, we just set this text view in our layout as an id of the text view, and then the second is find view by id dot id. So this line of code will be responsible to connect our variables in the Java code to the layout. What else? We'll also need for constant layout. So constant layout main should be find view by id dot id dot, I think my layout was the name which I gave. Perfect. Okay, so once done this, what else we'll need is will need to know create our sensor variables. One thing good about this sensors are you don't need any special permissions from the users of the app, and it's almost by default available to any apps. So most of the sensors by Android. Okay, so here we will do this get system service, and we will just try to get context dot sensor service. Perfect. So there may be some kind of warning or error here expected, because it will ask you to cast it and just use the auto fix from provided by the Android Studio environment. Perfect. So now what we'll do is we'll also use our sensor. Probably I can change this sensor to something like sensor light to make more sense that we are specifically using sensor light, and this is something which we will use from our sensor manager. Get default sensor dot type light. Perfect. Okay, so now yeah, our sensors are created from the sensor manager. So what else we'll need is we'll need to now put a kind of listener, event listener to this our sensor, and then register it. So we will create a sensor event listener. I'll just put light over here. You could have put ambient light also, but that will become a bit long. So I think just light is fine, and then new sensor event listener. Perfect. And it will automatically create the methods for you where we can do our coding. So there are two methods. One is on accuracy changed and on sensor changed. So I don't think we'll use any this method as of now, so we can leave it. And on sensor change is the method where we'll do our major programming or major concept. So here you can do whatever you want, but here in this tutorial I'll just try to keep it simple and straightforward. So I'll just try to check about the threshold value, if the value is more or less, and accordingly set the certain variables. So let's see what I do. So first I'll create a local variable, say for example float sensor value, and this I can get from event dot values, and this is the zeros. So it depends upon sensor to sensor. Most of the sensors in Android provides 3 values, and that is basically for dimensions x, y, and z. But over here I think it will be only one value, because it's just a variable, and I think it provides the lux output in the lux unit. That's a standard SI unit of the lights, and over there it's provide the output. And I think it's in the float. That's why I've taken it in the float variable. Okay, so once we have it, then we can check whether this particular value, whatever we have got, if this is less than the threshold what we have set above. So the threshold variable which we use is float threshold. So as of now, we have not used this, or we have just taken this as a default value or initialize it. But later in this method, the button set method will see how we will modify this variable based on the on-click attribute of this button. So let's hold on. For the time being, we assume that this float threshold, this particular variable, always has value at which we want to check the threshold whether it's a night or day or whatever. Yeah. So similarly, once we have checked it over here, we can set our or we can now do certain settings. So one is we can set the text in our text view, and we can say probably it is dark. Yes, and we can also set the respective uh, constant layout background of the layout. So set background color, and over here you can do color dot parse color, and in this you have to give it in the string format. So you should know the number to which you want to set. I will probably like to set it in the a bit gray tinge. So that's what I'm setting here. This number I found it up front. So that's what you will have to know. You can also set black by putting it completely 0 0 0 0, but yeah, you have to accordingly set. So you can choose what you want to set the background as. Okay, and if it's not less than 0, if it's a daytime or if it's bright, so you can just set respectively same thing, but the only thing it will change it, it's bright, or you can whatever message you want to give it over here. And over here probably I will set it the color is white, plain white. So that's all from the logic perspective. So this is the main part of the logic, and here you can do, I repeat, in this place, instead of doing all this what I have done, you should do what you really want to achieve by getting, once you get this ambient light values. Okay, so before we move on, we should also not forget to register this our listener in the sensor manager, and that we can do by registering listener. And first one will be of course the listener, and the second will be the sensor to which we want to register it. So all these are local variables of course. And then there's for the sampling period, I think we can just use that normal, something like that. Yeah, if you want to set it to priority, you can do it accordingly, but for the timing is fine. Okay, so I think more or less our on create the default code is fine. Now I'll show you what will happen when we set the threshold manually. So whenever we click this, the code will be pretty much simple. So we'll be setting our float threshold to the value what we get from get text from this particular edit text and to string. But please note here we are getting it in two strings, so we may have to change it to the float. So we can use for that purpose float dot, I think, float dot value of, and this is the second one we can use here. We'll just give the input as string and the output will be float, so it will just convert it into the respective float. It's a kind of typecasting. Okay, so that's all, but I think here we should also put a check that this should not be empty, otherwise this particular part will crash. So get text dot to string, and if this is empty, then probably we should not proceed and we should just return it from here. And never mind, you should not worry, because this variable will always have some values, because we have anyway set initial value, even if in the first attempt also we don't get any value, so that will work perfectly fine. So that's all. Now I think I will simulate it or run it on my emulator, and yeah, we'll wait. Perfect. So my app has come up, and it shows a dark, a bit grayish background, and it says it's dark. So I think, of course, the by default value 1 which we have set in our, I will just put it side by side. in the layout. So that's why it's becoming as it dark. So I think I'll change it to, say for example, something like 0, and see, okay, it's bright. So now it's detecting, because we are just changing the threshold to which it should check at line number 45, and the value over here of the sensor is coming automatically. So I would like to highlight one thing here, because this is an emulator. That's why it's behaving a bit weird. In your real phone, I think 1 will be a very low value. Value of 50 or 80 could be a much better value. So I'll also show the output in my real phone after this video. Just see that. And but from code perspective, that's all. So I hope you like this video, and yeah, so it's pretty simple. You have to just create a light sensor, and then you have to just put a event listener, and that will take care. So I hope you like this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, then please put in the comment section, and if you like this video, then please subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and please proceed forward to watch the output on my real phone. Thank you. Perfect. So our app has started now, and we can see the default value 1, which we have set in our layout and as well as in the code. So over here, of course, as I told, 1 is very less, and that's why it's showing bright. Probably we'll set this threshold to something more realistic. Setting it to 100 C, it changes to dark. Probably I'll take my phone to a bit brighter light, which of course you can't see, but still just okay. So I'm not changing the threshold, but if you saw, the my layout has changed to bright now, and of course sometimes there may be a delay. No, it is again dark because I'm back to my a darker environment, and sometimes there may be a delay because it depends upon how fast your listener is. So that's all I wanted to show as in terms of testing. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel if you like this video. If you have any questions or suggestions, then please put in the comment section. Bye.